for being here with us today. All the ministers from Nairobi and everybody who's representing the Nairobi government, all protocols duly observed. You are welcome today. So for day 2 opening keynote, His Excellency Johnson Sakaja, the Governor of Nairobi, Kenya. His Excellency Sakaja Arthur Johnson is the Governor of Nairobi City County, the capital city of Kenya. He has served as the immediate former Senator of Nairobi, previously as a nominated member of the National Assembly and chairperson of the ruling party between 2013 and 2017. He is one of the youngest governors in Kenya and is passionate about African youth development in public service. He was recently named by the World Economic Forum as one of the 100 young global leaders of 2023. During his tenure in Parliament, he served as the chairperson of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association and distinguished himself as a legislator addressing the most contentious issues of the nation. The governor has been awarded Chief of the Order of the Burning Spear, first class, by the President of the Republic of Kenya for his extensive legislative work in the 11th and the 12th Parliament. He has been nominated among the top 100 future leaders, the world's most influential young people in government 2018 by Apolitical, and awarded Changemaker of the Year 2016 at the African Achievers Award in recognition of his leadership skills and youth empowerment in Kenya. Please welcome with me His Excellency Johnson Sakaja.
Thank you very much. Mabibi na mabwana, tunakaribia kutua kwenye uwanja wa kimataifa wa London Heathrow. Tafadhali rekebisheni viti vyenu wima, mjifunge mikanda na mrudishe meza tayari kwa kutua. Asanteni. When young Emilio Kibaki, the third president of Kenya, landed here in 1959, that was not the announcement on the plane in Swahili. It definitely wasn't when Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya, did so 23 years before that. It was when I landed and when many of you from Kenya landed aboard Kenya Airways. Ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful to be here today. I'm grateful to the organizers of this for the invitation, to the Firoz Lalji Institute for its tireless work for African causes, and for the LSE, which has taught so many Africans so well. LSE is special to Kenya because amongst many great scholars and students that we are proud of are two Kenyan presidents, Jomo Kenyatta and Mwai Kibaki. This conference, I'm glad to say, puts students and young Africans at heart. We ask what future we can make with and for the able, inventive young people who've called us here today. As I landed at Heathrow the day before yesterday, and during the flight, I wondered why such a high-level summit would have its keynote by a politician and a governor of one of Africa's capital to the east, and then closed later today by the leader of another great capital in the west. Is it either to confirm whether the 4,898 kilometers between Nairobi and Abuja are still represented by what Ominode in 1988 says, an ideological vacuum of the political class, or to have an honest view of the current perspective from this generation of politicians in the urban context from two of Africa's great capitals? For my own peace of mind, I choose to believe the latter. The late Thandikwa Mkandawire, Wamba Diwamba, Professor Gola, Peter Anyang' Nyong'o indeed posited that the key challenge confronting African development was not so much of getting prizes right, but getting politics right. And I dare add, getting leadership right. I've been privileged enough to go around the beautiful continent of Africa, meeting and talking to many of these leaders. I am more confident now than I have ever been before that they're out there. They're doctors and nurses who, despite being surrounded by difficulty, do everything they can to preserve the dignity of their patients. They are brave journalists who are constantly reaching out for the truth in a world filled with complacency and compromise. They are businessmen and businesswomen who lead by example and are as concerned about integrity as they are about the bottom line. They are youth leaders mobilizing young people behind a movement they believe in. They are parents and teachers molding the morality of our children, civil servants, activists, vendors, students, conservationists, outstanding citizens, making honorable contributions to their own spheres of influence. Indeed, in his inaugural address here years ago, the late great Professor Thandika questioned the indulgence in the belief that one can talk about Africa as one place due to the great diversity of its people and experiences, hence the benefit of perspectives across the continent. So how do I view the now and the next generation? Confident, connected, capable. I see a confident Africa. I remember my first time outside of Kenya as a 26-year-old. My first visit was to Amsterdam and many other places in the Netherlands. I remember walking the streets, asking myself many questions, seeing people standing at the lights, a clean environment, no policemen. I asked myself, what is wrong with us? Who has bewitched us and has he died with the antidote? I asked myself many questions and I saw a lot of monuments of conquest, great conquest. As I kept pondering on this and on the plight of Africa, I took a ride with a friend across the border towards Germany. And again, I was shocked when there was no border control, just a sign, Willkommen to Deutschland. But it's at that point that a song was playing in the car that told me the answer. It was Bob Marley, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. And that's when I knew that was the problem facing our continent. That in as much as we got freedom from the shackles of imperialism, we were still captive in our thinking, captive in our minds. I look forward to an Africa that now is confident of itself, that has come of age, that can let go of those shackles that have been placed by ourselves, because only we can do so. There's been debate over the past years about the incursion of China and countries from the East into Africa, and the debate mainly is driven by the West. And when asked whether Africa is now facing East or West, I always posit that now Africa is facing forward. That is an Africa that is confident in itself, an Africa that can stand, that is rightfully at the table of nations, with leaders who have that confidence, with scholars who have that experience and have best learnings from across the world. An Africa that can connect from within itself and benefit from the learnings of other nations to chart the future. When Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, John Atta Mills, and even Mwai Kibaki, our leaders from our continent, were here at LSE just like you are, their countries were facing definitive, defining moments, and they had to rise up to their causes. There is nothing more powerful than a generation in tune with its time and in tune with its causes. Today, we are capable, this generation and the next generation. Then as now, and some of the challenges they are facing, Africa's population had entered a period of what looked like prolonged growth. We can now reasonably expect 2 billion Africans by the year 2100. According to the Brookings Institute recently, at 4.4%, we now have the fastest urbanization rate globally. We have already reached 40% urbanization, and by 2050, the number of urban residents will have doubled. 60% of this population, however, and unfortunately, today, live in informal settlements and slums. Globally, urbanization has been a good thing. Sadly, this hasn't been the case for our urbanization. We haven't yet begun to realize the full potential of such agglomeration, such as substantial productivity, gains supported by scale, better connected people and farms, leading to savings in transport and logistics, and even more efficient labor markets. These are the challenges that both myself and Her Excellency Ramatu Tijani Aliyu, who will speak later, faces in Nigeria. Then, just like now, there were troubling inequalities in access to the health, educational, political participation, and productive paid work that Africans needed to flourish. It is up to you, it is up to us to complete what they and their generation began. But we also have the benefit of hindsight. We can reflect from the long journey since independence, and we can learn from it. We can also learn from the mistakes and the successes of economies before us. And as now what is becoming one of my favorite scholars says, Thandika Mkandawiri posits in his scholarly article, Running While Others Walk. Remember that after the hopeful early post-independence years, we had politically and economically difficult periods when these upheavals, then later of democratization and liberalization, which substantially shape our present. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of those twists and turns were shaped and defined by the strong hand of economic thinking in many places, not in Africa. And that strong hand found its way through Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank, etc., and defined political decisions. One example, of course, as you all know, is the Berg Report. But today, the difference of this and the next generation is that today it is you, Africa's scholars, working with us, African leaders, on whose shoulder rests the onus of defining our own trajectory. We should be proud that in half the century or more since independence, we have actually built on the legacy of our founding fathers. Of course, some people in between slept on the job, but here we are now. Secondly, we should be even prouder of our commitment to democracy, because now it is no longer a theory which we have only heard of, but rather a reality which we choose for ourselves, for which we struggled, and which once won, we have never let go of. Earlier, I was discussing with my friend from Nigeria about the current experience in the courts after the election. The country is peaceful, the matters will be decided, and there'll be a transition. Many years ago, that wasn't the case for many of our countries in Africa. And that's our domestic political context in the years since our founding father was educated here, in a phrase that is used, a long, hard road to democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, thought leaders and policymakers, I am convinced of this not because I believe that the issues of Africa are small, but because I understand that we, the now and next generation of our continent, are resilient, and because we know that our potential abounds. I'm confident not because the road ahead is easy, but because every valley and every mountain that will take us to and through will be well worth it. I'm confident not just because I know that we can, but because collectively we must. We owe it to ourselves, to our children, and to the patriots who came before us to ensure that we never stop working to realize our continental ideals, that we never stop thriving until all the citizens of our continent have equality of opportunity, that you will not stop until no young person or child drops out of school because they cannot pay their fees, until no young person is unable to get the training or the capital they need to pursue a decent living and build a respectable life, until no mother has to lose a child to a preventable disease, until no father has to surrender his son to a life of crime or his daughter to the loss of her dignity, until no doctor is unable to access the equipment they need to deliver high-quality healthcare and administer life-saving treatments to our citizens. We must not rest until the ideal of completely accountable governments that are driven by the zeal and vigor of our youth is realized, until everybody across our nations understands that nobody is above the law, until every resource in our great land of Africa is exploited first and foremost for the benefits of our citizens, until the young people of Africa are fully mainstreamed into the economic life of the continent. We must not stop. We must not rest. We must remain steadfast and vigilant until we achieve the dreams of those who have been in this movement before us. I'm confident that generational change in our political leadership is not a dream, but a reality in the offing. Looking at the numbers of all the students across the globe coming from Africa, looking at those from LSE, a place I hold with a lot of pride, I always wanted to be at LSE, but now I'm here. I am confident that as we recalibrate our new systems of governance, our democracy that is coming up, even though it stumbles sometimes, our faith must remain unshakable, our march unstoppable, and our victory inevitable. I began with Kenyatta, so let me end, as is right and fitting, with the last sentence of Facing Mount Kenya, that the African realizes that he must fight unceasingly for his own complete emancipation. It is that same struggle to which we are all called, and we fight in the knowledge that victory is assured because our cause is just. Thank you very much.